Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge and Company. For the last 4 years, Council Member Corey Johnson has represented the residents of Manhattan's 3rd Council District, and he's done that with great energy and accomplishment. I know that because I'm one of his constituents. Now he leads members from every district in the city because he's the new Speaker of the City Council, and he's my guest today, and I welcome you.
I am so happy to be here, Ronnie.
Thank you. So what does it feel like seeing this enormous city that you're now the 2nd most important official of?
I describe it this way. Everyone says to me, oh my God, what's it like? You've been there for almost 3 months. And I say, it's these competing feelings of feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, and stressed, while at the exact same time, grateful, excited, loving it, and doing it with joy. And I got to see the city in a way that I'd never seen it before during the Speaker's race, when I went to all 51 districts. But now to be Speaker and to have the opportunity to work not just on behalf of the folks who elected me in the 3rd district on the west side, but for the whole city.
That's a challenge, isn't it?
It's a challenge, but also it is an opportunity and a big responsibility. And I'm here for a limited amount of time, so I don't want to waste any second, and I want to try to get some good things done for the 8.6 million people who live in our great city.
And it's interesting because there's so many different perspectives in the city, and you have such an opportunity to really find the way to connect it all. I remember when I was in the council from the west side, just above your district, everybody in the boroughs thought we were crazy to be living in Manhattan, right? And I suddenly discovered the rest of the city is really like suburbs. It's such a different approach.
Yeah, you go to Eastern Queens, you go to Mid-Island or the South Shore of Staten Island, you go to South Brooklyn, and it feels very, very, very different. But I mean, that I think is the real, I don't know, gift of New York City, is that in a city that is so diverse in so many ways, 180 languages spoken in the borough of Queens. Queens is considered the most diverse county in the world. We have that in our city.
It's amazing, isn't it?
And we peacefully coexist, and crime is at an all-time low, and the city's doing well economically, even though there are big threats from Washington and potential threats from Albany. So it's a real gift, and I feel really, really grateful. And the one, and I mean this sincerely, I'm not even sure I should say this, but it should say it because it's the truth. When I was elected in 2013, and it was a rough campaign, I woke up the next day, and I had worked in that race for a long time. Right. I woke up the next day, and I didn't feel any different. What I mean is I didn't feel special.
I know.
I didn't feel like, oh, you have to call me council member. Yeah. And as Speaker, it was a rough race. And when that election happened on January 3rd, and when the call got made on December 20th that I had secured the votes to be Speaker, I didn't feel any different. I don't feel any different. And I think it's so important.
That's so important.
So important for all of us in elected office. And I know you were this way when you were in the council, to be grounded.
And have a little humility.
Exactly. and to have fun.
Right.
To do a good, serious job, but also enjoy it and have fun and kind of emanate the joy of the job.
Right. And do it really what you think is right, not what you think, you know. Right. I remember when I was a district leader on the west side, and I suddenly got mail addressed to Honorable, and, and that's when they delivered the mail to your door, and the mailman said, "What did you do?" I thought, nothing. What did I do? I'm Honorable. Anyway, so the council.
Yes.
It looks to me from early indications that you're envisioning a slightly different path. Maybe not slightly different, right? Are you, with the charter thing fascinates me, so I want to know what you think in the charter. But are you happy with the distribution of power in the city and the way it works?
So I think all of the speakers who preceded me and you served with Speaker Vallone, who was the first Speaker of the Council when the charter changed to set up our new form of government, when the Board of Estimate was abolished and budgetary and land use power was given to the City Council. Speaker Vallone, Speaker Miller, Speaker Quinn, and Speaker Mark Viverito all did, I think, really important things for the body. And so I'm building on that, and one of the ways I'm doing that is really, hopefully, harnessing our charter-mandated power. And you know this, but your viewers should know it. The council really has 4 major charter-mandated powers. the city budget, which we have final vote on, the final disposition of land use items, to legislate, to pass local laws, and oversight on mayoral agencies. And I really want us to do that in an independent, strong, counterbalanced way to the mayor. That doesn't mean we're always going to fight with him. We're both left of center Democrats, and when we agree, we'll agree. But also when it comes to transparency in the budget and $88 billion, when it comes to do the land use items that come forward have deeper affordability and make sense for a community, when it comes to public housing, which we've seen in the news a lot these days, having real oversight over the Public Housing Authority, and when it comes to passing legislation that the mayor may not like, but that the body believes in and New Yorkers believe in, we can do that. We can do it in an independent way. It's not personal. He can veto it. We could override the veto. He could not like what we're proposing in the budget. We can have a real conversation about that. And what I'm trying to do is have the council be a strong, independent, co-equal branch of government in this city to deliver on behalf of the 8.6 million people who live here.
I think that's a very good perspective. The budget always has bothered me because, I mean, the council, it's almost like a game. There's a certain amount of money there for the council to appropriate. Is there any way for the council to be stronger with the budget?
Yeah, so we've done a few things. You know, when Mayor de Blasio came into office, the budget was $70 billion.
I know. When I was in the council, it was like 50.
Now,
52.
this upcoming fiscal year, it's $88.6 billion. It's grown over $18 billion in 4 years. And we still have a homelessness crisis in New York City, which we see on the streets every day, and we hear about in the 63,000 people who slept in the shelters last night. So we need to make sure that those budget dollars are being spent wisely and efficiently and appropriately, and that there's transparency to the public on how that money is being spent. So I created, under my speakership, a new subcommittee of the Finance Committee called the Subcommittee on the Capital Plan. We have a separate capital plan which funds schools and roads and public housing and parks, and that budget is tens of billions of dollars. And every administration, not just the de Blasio administration, but whether it be the Dinkins administration or the Giuliani administration or the Bloomberg administration, no administration has ever conformed to what the city charter says on how they're supposed to present the budget to the city council, the level of transparency. Should they be coming back to us for mid-year budget modifications instead of us over-appropriating money, which they can just use to move around? We have a real role in the budget. We need to exert that role, and we have to ensure that this administration, every administration, frankly, needs to conform to what the charter says, which gives the council a real role in that. And that goes into what you asked about a couple of moments ago about the council passing, which we're going to, a law creating a charter revision commission.
Right. So that's one of the things.
Well, we want the Charter Revision Commission, which would be an independent Charter Revision Commission, 4 appointees from the City Council, 4 appointees from the mayor, 1 appointee from each of the borough presidents, and 1 appointee from the public advocate and from the comptroller. So it's a balanced commission. No one has a majority. It would look at the budget process. It would look at independent budgeting. Should the borough presidents and the public advocate and the controller and the conflict of interest board have an independent budget that's not set by the mayor or the council outside of political interference? Should there be potential advise and consent on mayoral appointees? Should we dig deeper into units of appropriation in the city budget where you could have a city agency that could just put a line item, $700 million, with no details of what that $700 million is for? Those are the things that look at the broad structure of city government. They're not the sexiest things. They're not the most headline-grabbing things, but you were around for it. The '89 Charter Revision Commission, which Fritz Schwartz chaired and Eric Lane was the executive director of, that was the commission that really set up our government that we know today. And almost 30 years later, it's time to take a fresh look at that document and see where we can even make it better almost 30 years later.
The mayor is also going to appoint a separate one?
The mayor is going to appoint his own commission, which he's allowed to do.
And he's going to make all the appointments? Or is council going to have appointments?
He asked me for recommendations, but I told him that we're doing a commission, and you know, again, it's not personal. You know, it's state law, and the state constitution says that if a charter revision is going to be called, there are multiple ways it can be called. A mayor can unilaterally call it. The council can pass a local law creating it, or the public could vote by referenda to create a charter revision commission. I wanted him to take a broad-based look at the city charter. He has a focus that he wants his charter.
I forget, what is it?
His focus is, he's calling it a democracy agenda. So he wants to potentially lower campaign contribution limits. He wants to create a chief democracy officer. He wants to look at reforms to the Board of Elections, which I'm not sure he can do because it's state law, but he wants that to be the focus of his commission. I wanted a commission that would have a broad look at city government.
But you're happy, I mean, the budget is one thing, and it's an important thing, and it's, I think, the one place that the city council really should have some more power and input. Land use?
Yes.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
It's pretty good, though if you talk to communities across the city,
they don't feel they have enough input.
Yeah, I mean, the community boards get 60 days to weigh in on an application when it gets certified through the ULURP process, which stands for Uniform Land Use Review Procedure. It's the land use process in New York City, and they have an advisory role. The borough presidents have 30 days. They have an advisory role after the community boards. Then it goes to the City Planning Commission, which has a binding vote, and then it comes to the City Council, and we have the ultimate say. Before that process even starts, from community board to borough president to City Planning Commission to City Council, there's a lot of stuff that happens in what's called the pre-certification process. And there may be ways, potentially, to have a process that is more transparent and that listens to communities a bit more. But all of this is a balancing act. In any community across the city, no one really loves change. We need to build more affordable housing. City demographers just said a week ago we surpassed 8.6 million people in the city. And they're now projecting that instead of us hitting 9 million by 2050, which was the original prediction, we're now going to pass 9 million people by 2040. Where are they going to live? I don't know. That's part of the reason why we need to build more housing and we need to build affordable housing.
And how can they even afford to live here, right? That is the biggest question. The more participation of communities follows your interest in participatory budgeting, but it also comes to the lack of, I hate the term, but that's what they're using now, civic engagement.
Yes.
I think that's one of the most important things the city faces, really. I mean, we have adequate campaign finance, it seems to me. It's pretty strict and pretty good, and it helps people run. But when you have an election where somebody gets elected with, what, 5,000 votes? Or
that happens all over the city.
Happens all over. Why is that? And how can we do something about that? Well,
it's one of the big things that the mayor's talking about and that the council's talking about. You have in primaries across the city, which in New York State, you can only vote if you're a member of that party, which I'm not sure that's a bad thing. You have dismal turnout. And in this last mayoral election, both in the primary season and in the general election, the turnout was, I think, like 10% or something along those lines. It's pathetic. One of the things that we know in the age of Donald Trump, with this Republican Congress, with all of the regressive things that are happening on a daily basis, I think we've seen more civic participation, at least when it comes to people being in the streets. Last week we had the March for Our Lives, which was so moving. All these young people, teenagers from across New York City who were here, 800,000 people in Washington, D.C. We had the 2 women's marches, which were incredible. And in these special elections across the country, we've seen record turnout and even greater turnout among millennials and young people. So there's nothing like motivation of a regressive administration to get people excited and active. I hope we're going to see that in the 2018 midterm elections. I hope we see that in the 2020 presidential election, and hopefully that will carry over into 2021. A democracy, a healthy democracy, requires activist participants. It is not good enough to Facebook. It is not good enough to tweet. It's not good enough to complain to your friends. You have to vote, which is the most important thing, but you also have to volunteer and get involved and join a community board and get active.
And local political clubs or anything else, you know. But, I mean, my interest in politics was partially generated by my 7th grade civics teacher at Joan of Arc Junior High School. He was remarkable. And Eleanor Roosevelt. Here we had all these high school students and other students involved in this. What are our high schools doing to involve them? Do they teach civics in every school? I don't think so.
They don't, and that's...
Do they have interest? I mean, is that something that the Board of that the council could really help? Could local councilmen have a project getting into it? I just don't know. I'm just so exasperated at the lack of interest. And the other part of it is it's so hard for New York people to get involved in meaningful races because our members of Congress stay there forever. And it's very hard, right? And people come here for money, but they don't really worry about the state's vote. So it's just difficult.
Well, what I tell everyone is that even though we're lucky enough, if you live in Manhattan, to live in Manhattan, or if you're lucky enough to live in the city as a whole in all 5 boroughs, it's not an excuse not to get involved because if you go to Grand Central Station and take a 35-minute train ride, you're in the Hudson Valley and John Fasso's district, and that's a swing seat. If you hop on New Jersey Transit and go 35 minutes to northern New Jersey, you're in Leonard Lance's district, which is a swing seat, Republican held. If you hop on the Long Island Railroad and you go out to the East End, you're in Lee Zeldin's district, who is bought and paid for.
So you're not advocating primary races against members of Congress?
No, I think people
from New York City. I'm kidding you.
I think people should take one weekend a month, one weekend a month from now till the November general election, and you can go to a website called Swing Left, and it will tell you the swing races around where you live, and you go up and you volunteer in the Hudson Valley or Northern New Jersey or Long Island or even Staten Island, where we have a Republican-held seat.
True.
You can take the Staten Island Ferry.
Right.
You can work on local races. The democracy that we hold so dearly is being tested right now, and everyone should feel a call to arms. And you know this better than I do. Every modern American political movement, whether it be the women's suffrage movement 100 years ago, or the African American civil rights movement, or the LGBT rights movement, or the farm workers movement, or the anti-war movement, or now this movement we're in now for gun control and for the future of our democracy, these are all movements that were led by people, not politicians.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
They were led by the masses.
And the importance for that. We don't move anything unless we have people out front beyond what we're doing.
And now,
totally.
And this is the new movement.
Right.
So people shouldn't think, I can read in the history books what it was like in the 1960s. They can make history themselves. They can make history themselves. MLK was killed 50 years ago next week, April 4th. And people shouldn't think, oh my God, I wish I was around back then to get involved in that. Now is the moment to get involved. We see what's happening in this country. Every young person should feel like this is now their moment to be part of a new movement to change the future of our country.
So will you ask the Board of Education how they're planning to get people more involved?
Well, the mayor proposed in his State of the City just a couple of months ago to have civics for all in classrooms all across the city, which of course I support. One of the frustrations at the City Council is that with mayoral control, the mayor has ultimate say.
Yeah.
So we don't have much say, but that doesn't mean we can't use our bully pulpit. That doesn't mean we can't talk about it in budget hearings.
And have kids come into your offices.
Exactly.
I'm not talking about the mayor's concept of democracy. I don't mean that. I mean, I really just feel people have to get more involved. And I'm asking you because that's your basis. I mean, that's what you did. Where did you start with being interested in politics?
Well, I grew up 25 miles north of Boston in a little tiny town. And my family was not a super political family. But when I came out at 16 years old, I was captain of my high school football team. And I was the only openly gay student in the high school, 1,500 kids. This was in 1999.
How many gay people did you know?
0. I didn't know a single gay person.
So what led you to?
I was despondent, depressed, suicidal. I felt like unless I talk about this and tell my family, I can't live this way. And so I got the courage to tell my parents, who were immediately unconditionally loving. And then I decided that I wanted to come out at school. And this was 6 months after Matthew Shepard had been murdered in Wyoming. In my story, I was very lucky that I had a loving family and a supportive football team and a supportive school. And that was the match that lit my activism. I was the only openly gay student. I remember I went to go give blood at a blood drive after I came out, and they told me I couldn't give blood because I was a gay man. And I started speaking all across Massachusetts. I spoke in 30 high schools my senior year, and I figured I was a pretty good public speaker. I took a year off after high school, And I traveled the country and I spoke in 40 cities about my experience. And they'd fly me to Minneapolis and I'd introduce Senator Wellstone at an event and tell my story.
Who did you connect with in that?
The Human Rights Campaign engaged me to do that work. And then I got a phone call one day. I was living in San Francisco on my gap year between high school and college when I was doing all that speaking. And I got a call from an organization in New York called the Hetrick Martin Institute, which is the home of the Harvey Milk High School on Astor Place. And they said, we've seen your speaking. We'd love for you to come to New York to get our annual award. So I said, okay. So I came to New York and I was supposed to spend a week here. And at the end of a week, I said, I want to spend another week. And I spent another week. And at the end of that week, I said, I don't want to leave. So I went back to San Francisco, figured out a plan to move to New York. I came here on May 1st, 2001, got involved in local politics through LGBT activism. I was involved in my community in Chelsea, ran for city council in 2013. I'd never worked in government. I'd never worked for an elected official. I'd been on the community board. I'd worked on issues. I'd worked on campaigns, ran for the council and won.
And look at you now.
And then 4 years later, I run for speaker and I win. So I am a very blessed, grateful New Yorker.
Right. That is a great story. So it gives you a whole understanding of what it means. It really does, right?
I think the way to get people involved is to inspire them. And that's why it's easy, of course, and I fall victim to this as well, to be really down about the level of participation. But us being down about the level of participation and kind of being upset about it.
No, we have to exhort them.
Exactly. We have to inspire people
Right.
to get them involved. And I think the most inspiring thing to get people involved, the thing that inspired me as a 16-year-old and 17-year-old was reading about the people that came before me, hearing about Harvey Milk, hearing about LGBT activists during the AIDS epidemic, which you lived through and you were in the council during it. To hear about those stories.
I lived through it earlier in City Hall.
Yes, so you
At
know.
the very beginning.
So
right.
for those understanding our own history and wanting to make a change in the world and realizing that I had the possibility and potential to do that is what inspired me to get more involved. And hopefully what we're seeing in this country right now, you saw in Virginia, they had their elections in November, statewide elections, the General Assembly. The Democrats picked up, I think, 15 or 16 seats. And I think 12 of the people who won were women who had never run for office before.
It's so thrilling. It's exciting.
You have the women are the ones who are actually taking our democracy back.
Right.
They're inspired. They are running for office as first-time candidates because they want to change the world.
The message to get out to people is that you can change the world.
Yes.
And we need people, we need to develop the empathy in everybody so they can really relate to what they're talking about. You know, people have to understand other people's needs, right? And I remember Robert Kennedy, who was also 50 years in June that he was killed. That he didn't give one speech without saying, you've got to vote, always. And you've got to be concerned about other people and conditions in the world. You're right.
Harvey Milk's most famous line was, you gotta give them hope.
Right, it's true.
You gotta give them hope. If people don't have hope, then they're not gonna be motivated to participate and try to change the world.
So how are you going to instill this in all your members? You're the boss there.
Well, I'm not the boss. I'm sort of am the very grateful leader.
Right.
But you know, you have 50 members from diverse districts, as we talked about, who all have different priorities and needs. Many of whom are going to be termed out of the council, so they want to make their mark. And I think by and large, we're a pretty progressive body, though there is even diversity of opinions amongst the Democrats in the body. There are only 3 Republicans out of 51 members. And so, you know, we have to, I think, do a few things. My vision is a few things. It's one, looking at the big issues that our city faces, whether it be a homelessness crisis, whether it be an affordability crisis with the lack of affordable housing.
Excuse me, the homelessness also calls for empathy. You know,
totally.
Right. The acceptance of the fact that we all can do something about it.
You know, the most important thing, the most important thing for me is we see the Republicans in Washington trying to shred the social safety net, which has existed since the New Deal, basically. Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, food stamps, all these very important things which we know save lives and make our society a better place. And so as a council, we need to focus on homelessness, affordable housing, the MTA, these big issues that affect the whole city, while at the same exact time focusing on hyper-local issues that neighborhoods care about. So I live in Chelsea, and most people on my block that I've lived on for 15 years now, I think most of them judge the health of New York City based off of their local block, their local school, their local park, their local small business, their local subway station.
I was going to say transportation. Right?
That's their barometer of how well the city's doing. So we need to have good sanitation, good schools, good parks, supporting small businesses. Because the vast majority of New Yorkers, when crime is at an all-time low like it is right now, tourism's at an all-time high, unemployment is low, economic indicators right now are in a good position, they are not worried about crime in a big way. They're judging the health of the city based on these hyper-local things. And as a local elected official, you did this, Ronnie. You have to make sure the tree pit has a tree in it. You have to make sure that the park is safe. You have to make sure that the street is clean. Those are the basic functions of a city, basic city services. And New Yorkers need us to do the big things that I talked about, social safety net, affordable housing, homelessness, MTA, while at the same exact time focusing on the smaller things that really matter to New Yorkers.
It's a great vision. I'm sorry to tell you that the program is finished.
Are you serious?
So you have to promise me that you're going to come back, and maybe we can spend an hour. We have so much to talk about that we didn't even discuss.
I felt like we just started. Well, you're the best, and you're a role model.
I'm watching you.
And you're amazing.
And I'm very, very confident that I'm going to be very proud that my council member is now talking to everybody else.
I'm so grateful and happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. We at CUNY TV always like to hear from our viewers. So if you have any subjects you'd like to explore or people you'd like to hear, please let us know. Write to us at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or go to our website, cuny.tv, and click on Contact Us. We look forward to hearing from you.